and welcome to Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. I am your host and resource for self-care and mindfulness. After a life-altering, life-altering near-death accident in 2012, Matthew faced tremendous challenges, including chronic pain, depression, and cognitive disabilities. However, through unwavering determination and resilience, he has not only overcome these obstacles, but he has also become a beacon of inspiration for others seeking to reach their full potential. So today, Matthew Sanjari is a successful entrepreneur, business coach, and consultant with a passion for helping individuals surpass their limitations and achieve greatness. And I am so happy to have you with us here today, Matthew. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Laura. I'm pumped to be here.
Cool. Hey, so can you I know that's might be a little touchy because this sounds pretty traumatic, but can you walk us through the pivotal moments of your journey from the near-death accident to where you are today and what happened?
Yeah. So that accident, to give people context, I was in my early 20s, and honestly, life was great. I had great family, great friends, had a great job, was traveling all across North America doing public speaking. And I was dating a girl at the time, and she lived in the country. And I was driving home late one night in my SUV, and two horses jumped out into the road. And I didn't know much about horses, so if anyone does, they were Clydesdales, if that means anything to
Oh,
anybody.
wow.
Yeah.
Big
And
horses.
so they were bigger than my SUV. And so they just hopped out. I slammed on the brakes. It's pitch black, I think 10 or 15 minutes to midnight. And that's it. Just completely collided with them. When they measured, it was 3 inches, and I would have been done. And so, yeah, long story short, basically I had to force my way out of the car, went to the hospital, the whole bit. And I did what every young dumb male in his 20s does, where I just thought everything would be fine. I thought, hey, it happened, I survived, it'll be good. But as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I started to realize that there were some things that were really, really wrong. Chronic pain, cluster headaches, some disabilities, and things that were really disabling. And it really became a pivot moment in my life, because everything in my life up until that point was about to change and was about to shift. And so that moment really left an impact on my life at the time, for worse, but in hindsight has changed so many things. And the truth is, 12 years later, I actually still struggle with a lot of the same pain, a lot of the same injuries, but my journey has definitely evolved.
Yeah, and an impact like that is tough. And yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily young and dumb, because, my fiance was older when he dumped the motorcycle. He knew he should have jumped away from it, only going slow, wrecked himself. But he was convinced that, he told the ambulance, they said, for considering what he went through, his vitals were good. So he's like, cool, I don't need you. And and he stepped out, and then I had to take him. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's just my shoulder. No, he broke ribs 2 through 9, his clavicle. I mean, I was like, wow. So I think maybe he had a little adrenaline or disbelief probably going on too.
For sure.
So, yeah, I think we all kind of go through that. But what were some of the biggest challenges you faced then during the recovery, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was physical pain in terms of, that became really, really limiting. Mentally, started to really experience some cognitive difficulties. I mean, my headaches could knock me out anything from, 15 minutes to weeks at a time. And when I say knock me out, I mean, I'm incapacitated in bed. I'm not talking to people, can't have lights on, the whole bit. So, I mean, it really feels like life was at a standstill at certain points. And I think the part that was, all of that sucked, wasn't great. But I think honestly, looking back, I think the hardest part for me was mentally. This idea that, this is how things are. This is not how I want them to be. And that I might potentially have to figure things out was really scary and really confronting. And I think that mental aspect, even though I'd started to get treatment and started to get, um, different therapies for the physical pain and some of the cognitive stuff, I was still terrified mentally at just the prospect that all of my life was changing. And I feel like I was really losing control.
Yeah, but I think that's an important part. The point that you mentioned is the fact that you didn't want to be, you didn't want to be that way. I've seen where in a lot of cases, people just tend to say, well, this is my life now. And and accept it when you kind of really don't have to.
Totally. And I think that was, it's funny because I definitely had that attitude, but in the beginning, that attitude was driven out of anger.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went through the 5 stages of grief for sure, right? And I
Yeah,
think that anger left me in disbelief. It left me wondering, how is this going to be my lot in life? Like, is this my new reality? And it wasn't until later, as time had kind of passed, that my perspective changed. I love to, something I often tell my clients, and whenever I do public speaking, is, my pain is still here, and the pain is still here 12 years later. I still deal with that. So that while the pain has remained the same, my perspective has changed. And it's that
right.
perspective that has been fundamentally just flipped over on its head as time has gone on.
Yeah, and that is huge. So, how would you say your experiences with the chronic pain and depression shape your approach to business and coaching?
Yeah, I mean, when I say everything in my life turned upside down, everything did. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of the motivational side, a lot of the mindset stuff about, pushing through pain and perseverance, and all that is so necessary and so needed.
Mm-hmm.
But, one of the questions I ask a lot of my clients right now, if you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, or you're a high performing leader, I always ask the question, you know, God forbid, if something were to happen to you and you got knocked out for the next month, what would happen to your business? What would happen to your family, your organization, whatever? And everyone always gives me the same response, right? There's an awkward chuckle. I can see the panic kind of hit them, and then they usually respond, "Yeah, I would be decimated. I probably wouldn't have much left." And to that, I tell people, I say, well, you don't have a business, then you have a job. Because if you stop showing up to your job, you don't get paid. So let's
Right.
build you a business. And the reason I asked that question is because that was true in my life. I started a business because I came to this point where I was like, nope, nobody's going to hire me, right? Like I could be out 3 days, I could be out 3 weeks, I could be out 3 minutes, right? And
Right.
so the uncertainty didn't matter what my skills, credentials, or talents were, or my confidence. I was like, no one's going to hire that. So I had to go work for myself. So I started a business. And the truth is that I didn't know any of these things. Had a lot of ambition and and a lot of dreams, but I didn't know any of these things. So when I asked my clients that question, that fundamental question, it's because as quick as I was gaining clients, I was losing them because everything was built on me. Everything depended on me. So yeah, there's a lot of strategic things and a lot of thinking and a lot of leadership stuff that I've learned
Mm-hmm.
along the journey, but a lot of it's also really practical. And it's these things that I now bring to my clients to say, hey, the reason why you're drowning in work is because you're doing everything yourself. The reason why you can't breathe and you feel stuck is because you don't have the systems in place. And it's pretty interesting, and I'm sure you've encountered this, but it feels like for my client base and the people that I talk to, business owners, high performers, leaders, entrepreneurs, it's a lot of the same problems. It's a lot of things that people just give language to around the same stuff.
Yeah, and there's and it comes down to perceptions and perspectives too, because yeah, I still mostly do everything myself except for a little bit of the marketing team of TV, but I also am all about mindfulness and self-care. I'm not like some of these other people where I see they just schedule meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. It's like, that's not me. I can't, I can't run and do that. Everybody's got to find, their balance. So, and your business that you started is called Prime Consulting, correct?
Yeah, prime.
Yeah. So we have that QR code up there for anybody that wants to connect with them. But yeah, I mean, that is just amazing what you've done. And you even had some struggle with like weight gain and routine disruptions. So is all of that kind of effect? Because like you said, as a job, if you had a job, people don't want to hire that because they need to know that you're going to be able to show up to work. I mean, you may be fantastic, but if they don't know if you're going to be able to come to work or next, and an entrepreneur makes that totally different. Um, how did that all kind of work out for you? I mean, you work hard, right? And you have to put everything in place, because that's like I told people, if something doesn't come in, then that's on me because I didn't get up and do it. How did you balance with all that?
Totally. And it's interesting, right? Like I gave the analogy, if you don't show up to your job, you don't get paid because people expect something of you. Well, it's funny because in many ways, businesses very similar, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
don't deliver for my clients, I'm not getting paid. The difference is that I can kind of put these layers in between me, and I can create something that is bigger than just me. And so for me, I think one of the biggest ways I learned that, you'd mentioned, so the accident happened in 2012. By 2016, things were not good. I was 3 years into the business, but my body and my life were a wreck. I had gained significant weight. I was up to 315 pounds at one point. Like I was, yeah, struggling to walk upstairs, like without like having to catch my breath. And I remember just like looking, uh, I honestly think it was as profound as this. I remember looking at the mirror once and like catching my breath and being like, something needs to change. Like we
Mm-hmm.
actually can't keep going this way. And I basically went down this like mental journey where I said, you know what? I can't change the accident. I can't change what happened to me. I can't change the circumstances around all of this, even though I hate it. But I wonder if there's something that I can take control of. I wonder if there's something that I can take ownership of, and maybe it's my weight. And so I basically went down this journey where I was like, there's this business adage that, you can't manage what you're not measuring. And I was like, okay, well, let's obsess over that. So I started this journey where every single day I just started to mark things down. I marked down how I felt with a number. I marked down what I was eating with a number, how many steps I took. I just obsessed, and I went on this journey where I actually lost 150 pounds.
That's
And
amazing.
I tell people, I'm like, I lost a person is basically how it feels. Um, and for me though, it was this moment that went off that I was like, yes, the weight loss and the health benefits, amazing. But it was this idea that, wait, I don't have to live my life just kind of as a byproduct of what happened. I can actually make decisions and determine what I want to see happen. If it worked here, why can't it work elsewhere? And so I started to put those same systems, those same metrics, those same ideas into my business. Started to do it into my relationships. I started to, and I started to see this carryover where I was like, man, and I took that adage further. I said, you know what, you can't multiply, you can't grow what you're not managing. And if I'm not managing what I'm not measuring, then my finances, my business, my relationships, how do I measure these things? And so it led me down this journey of, where I found myself today. And more than the data, even though the data is fantastic and I'm a bit of a numbers nerd sometimes, it's this idea that, man, I can take ownership of things in my life. Again, not, I love what my fiance says. She's an emotional health coach, and she framed it for me this way. She said, what happened to you wasn't your fault, but what comes next is your responsibility. And that notion to me is so powerful because it creates distance between the past and what happened. We can live in reality and
Right.
understand that.
Oh yeah.
But for me, we talk about mindfulness, this idea that I can actually be the best version of me, and I can actually take care of myself by taking ownership and saying the buck stops here. We don't have to keep going in these areas. We can change. It may not change tomorrow, but I can take ownership and see change happen across these areas in the coming days, weeks, and months.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of parallels there. If because like you said, a lot of times people say work is work and family is family, but really it affects the whole. So I mean, a lot of those perspectives and routines or systems that you were picking up to help your physical and stuff, then really kind of sounds like it just really influenced your coaching style and the philosophy when working with clients. Because really, why should you treat them as something different? I mean, it's the same in business and personal. If something happened, if you can't change it, you kind of have to let it go, but you can change, you can control what you can control. And those are what you can make changes for.
Totally. Right.
So,
And I think it comes down to this whole idea of like, I just want to be the best version of me
mm-hmm.
because, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, a leader, high performer, or, you work a 9 to 5, whatever it is, you can't, I don't care who you are, how think you're good at that. You're not disconnecting your personal life from your work. Right. And so like I tell people, I'm like, if you struggle with boundaries at work, it's often because you probably struggle with boundaries in your personal life. Right. And so unless we set this framework and we start to go to town on what the actual issue is, it's going to bleed into all these areas of our lives in the same way that negative things do, as well as successful things do. And so
So do you find yourself when you're trying to help coach people with business, you're actually kind of coaching them with their personal relationships too? Because in a sense, it's kind of all intertwined.
Totally. I think we have to start there, right? Well, one of the biggest questions I ask people is I often start with this question, and it's, what does success for you look like? And that's a very different question than what your goals are, because goals have a start, a middle, and an end, right? And when I ask that question, people say, I want to make $10 million, or I want to work 10 hours a week. Like, that's wonderful, but I want to know what success looks like for you, because I was in a business meeting last night actually, and I asked that question, and someone said, success for me looks like peace of mind. Success looks like family is my sanctuary. So then my follow-up is easy. Okay, well, how does your calendar reflect that? How does your bank account reflect that? And then you can see the wheels turning, like, oh, I say peace of mind is my priority, but yet I'm taking work calls at 8 p.m. Right? Everybody's got access to me at all times of day. Everybody else's emergency is my urgency. And so all these things that we thought were business problems, we actually look back and we're like, oh crap, I actually set a culture. As a person, as a human being, as a leader, I've created a culture of this, sometimes by accident, right? But the culture is still the sum of all its parts. And so, yes, oftentimes I think it's super important in any conversation that I actually go back to the root. And it's when I ask those questions in the beginning, when I work with people, again, my intention is not to go personal, but it's amazing how often it goes personal, because people start to recognize and reconcile for themselves. Oh crap, right? That light bulb over the head, I can see the eureka happening. And that's really what I want. I want to ask the questions that brings the gold out of people and brings them to a place where they recognize for themselves. And I find that is just super impactful and much more helpful.
Yeah. And it's important too, like you said, what success looks like to you. Because a lot of times when you go work for people, they got all this plan, this, and that, but it's not really, it's not you, it's not who you are. And so meeting people, I think, where they're at also, and finding out what success looks like. Because most of us as coaches and stuff, when you're coaching people, it's not for us to impose what we think they should do. It's to help us to help them get where they need to go.
Totally. You know what? And this is where I am brutally honest with people. I say, hey, if you think that I'm the expert, you're hiring the wrong guy. If you think that I'm going to be the one throwing you a lifeline, or this is going to somehow save your problem, because I think in some respect we're all looking for that lifeline, or that savior or safety. I tell people, like, that's not what this is. My job is to help bring the best out of you, to ask the questions that create a space for you, because you're in this industry. I'm not in this industry. You're in this industry, and I want to create a space and a framework so that you actually have the ability to zoom out and say, oh, I know exactly what needs to get done. Oh, I can see things clearer now. And I'm here to help you weigh those options, and hey, you can go down whatever road you want. Just know, here are the pros, here are the cons. And that's what people need. That's what a coach is, right? Like, and to me, I grew up with a huge sports background, but I always love this notion that I'm like, the coach doesn't play the game. The coach didn't even have to necessarily have played the game in a past life. The coach just needs to create a framework that maximizes all of the players' abilities and their ability to succeed. And I think that's really what coaching is.
Yeah. Just, I was going to say, since you've got a big sports background, does any of that kind of play into your coaching?
For sure. But I'm learning to pick my spots. I think in the beginning I was pretty liberal with it, and some people would just look at me blankly, and I was like, yeah.
That's not a sports person.
Yeah, sports, my humor. I'm learning to pick my spots. So.
Yeah. Oh, and I think we all do. I always tell people, is like, if you think you're the smartest one in the room, then you're in the wrong room, because we're always constantly learning, whether you're a coach or whatever. We always have something to learn. Totally. And I know we have a whole lot more to cover, especially about how you stayed motivated through all of this, and how you work with people and what you do. But we have to take a quick break from our sponsors, and we will be right back.
got soul. Oh yeah, we got soul.
Hi, I'm Bobby Aldridge with BAM Metrics. There are so many programs out there that measure your swing speed, sets, reps, your BMI, your body fat, but the one thing they're not measuring that's so essential is mobility. Mobility is the key. If you're measuring your mobility, your performance will get better and you will reduce your pain. I created BAM Metrics to make it easy for people to repeat the exercises so they could do it properly at home on their own. It's simple, it's easy to do, and from a senior to a pro athlete.
Relief for PTSD, anxiety, pain, insomnia, and many other ailments. Introducing Vibe, the world's only pocket PEMF device. You place it in your pocket while cooking, cleaning, relaxing, watching TV, sitting at your computer, reading, or walking. Self-contained standalone device. No drugs. No other phone or Bluetooth connections required. No monthly subscription fees. No apps to download. No Bozone. The future of medicine is in the frequencies. Come join the revolution.
So Matthew, you've had a lot of adversity, both personally, professionally, between recovering from the accident. How did you stay motivated and resilient through all that?
Listen, full disclosure, I don't know that I stayed motivated the entire time.
Okay.
I think, especially in the beginning, right? Just going back to my story, I think it was really, really hard. And I would have classified myself as a failure in the beginning just because that motivation was hard to come by. I think one of the game changers for me, because, and I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but motivation comes and goes, right? Your passion will come and go. But to me, it's this idea, and I try and frame it as the why behind the what. The what is whatever we're doing, going to work, earning an income, going to the gym, right? Trying to be healthy, whatever. For me, I really encourage people to find the why behind the what. And the reason for that is that, you can set a goal. I mean, for me, I set a goal. I wanted to lose weight, right? I was 315. I lost 150. That was amazing. But there's other parts of that story. I actually gained a bunch of it back, 40 pounds back within a couple of years. And I had to go on another journey where I've since lost it again because I realized that I was like, oh, my goal was actually primarily to lose weight. That's what I was obsessing over. And when I got to that goal, well, guess what happened? I reached the goal. So then, I kind of got comfortable and things kind of went by the wayside and the weight started to go back up. The second time when I went back on that journey to lock it down, I said, instead of trying to lose weight, I'm actually going to try and be healthy because losing weight has a target. Being healthy is just a consistent process. And now I find myself here in a much better place where my why is much more all encompassing. And so I encourage people, I say, hey, when it comes to your motivation, find your why. Your why is not you want to make a lot of money. Your why is not even you want to spend more time with your family. Your why has to be this thing that's really rooted out of probably a fear that you have. And for me, that fear was, man, I want to live up to my potential. I want to take care of people. I have all these things, but it really came out of this fear. And so my motivation, when I started locking into my why, my motivation really started to become more sustainable. It really revealed my commitment to just the things in general, because you know what? Days were hard. Life is hard. We all go through change. We all go through pain, but it's the why that kept me going. And still to this day keeps me going. Right. And it makes me want to push within reason, obviously, within the context of, my health and, my life and where I'm at. But my why is really what drives me. I like to frame it for people that you don't have to hit two horses to go through pain. You don't have to have your life turned upside down to go through change. We all have pain. We all have change. And so if that's going to be consistent in life, you might as well find out what your why is, because you know that stuff's going to hit the fan at some point. So if you can find your why now, then it's going to help you through those tough and those dark times. And it's going to allow you to extract something from times that I think a lot of us look at and say, there's nothing good here. It's the desert.
Yeah. So do you find is your why, do you feel basically the same, or do you see it, or has it been kind of slowly changing or growing as you go along?
It's interesting. I actually feel like my why has been really, really consistent. The what has changed. I tell people, like, I worked on and off as a pastor. I ran a marketing business that I had a successful exit from, got into real estate, and now I'm a business coach. The skin has changed, the window dressing per se, but my why has actually stayed the same. And it's always been my desire to live a really open, audacious, ambitious life, and one that I hopefully am helping people go along that journey as well and see them reach their potential. And so, again, simply because that was my why, I now help other people with it.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I find a lot of mine's always kind of stayed a little bit the same as well, but sometimes it kind of evolves and changes a little. So I was just curious. Can you share a specific turning point or maybe a breakthrough moment that significantly impacted your journey towards success?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I know I'm probably cheating here, but let's use the accident again.
Okay.
I think for me, that accident, looking back, could have been a death blow to so many things, right? Like you had kind of suggested earlier on the recording, I could have just stopped. I could have been like, I give up, thrown up the white flag, I resign. And looking back, I'll be careful with my words, while I very much did not appreciate hitting two horses and ending up in a traumatic car accident, I have found a lot of purpose in that pain. And not just for myself, but in conversation. I've had conversations with people who've heard my story, who've said, hey, I also struggle with this. I struggle with this invisible illness, or this, these symptoms that don't seem so public. And so finding purpose in my pain from the accident, I think that in so many ways has changed my life for the better. And that's not something that I would have said then, a year, 2, 3, or 4 years, even. But now I look back and I say, wow. And again, full disclosure, I still have a lot of the pain. I still have a lot of the symptoms, but I can at least very much see that there was just something going on in the background. And I've very much come to a place in my life where I'm better for it.
Yeah. And as you said, you still have a lot of that pain and stuff. So how are you balancing that along with your role of being a business coach with those challenges and stuff?
Yeah. So again, it's been a lot of that learning curve, and it's what I work on with my clients. It's, understanding my limitations and understanding what I want to accomplish, and then building out systems and putting things in place that work around me. And, because at the end of the day, I'm of no good to my clients. I'm of no good to my family or to my fiance or to anybody in my life if I'm not good. And that doesn't have to be a selfish thing, again, because, for me, it really is rooted in, I live in the reality of, this is my circumstance. My circumstance is that I have pain. My circumstance is that I have chronic pain. Things flare up. Just today, I had my neck kinked out, and it was really, really rough this morning. So if I live in reality and I accept that, then now we can go somewhere from here. And so taking that and just living in that and saying, okay, where do we go from here? I think has been so beneficial for me, and it's kind of helped me move forward.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of people that struggle. Some people just put on a good face. Some people let them shut them down. It's just kind of, again, like you said, how you approach or present. Do you want to share maybe some of those systems or tricks that you use with people?
Yeah, for sure. So I basically have this 3-step framework that I used to do on myself, and I do with my clients. But that first step is, if I were to sum it up, it's 3 questions. The first one is, am I living in reality? Right? if you're not living in reality, as painful as that is, and you know what, reality can be good, it can be bad, that's fine. But let's live in just an agnostic reality. Reality is, this is what my situation is. This is what my bank account looks like. This is where my health is at. This is where my time is. It allows us to now make a plan and where we want to go from here. So that's the first thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I often do is, okay, so now that we live in reality, what am I afraid of? What's my fear? Right? Because truth is, we all have fears, right? And so for a lot of people, their goals are actually just inverted fears. I want to make $10 million. Okay, talk to me about that. Well, I don't ever want to be without. Okay, so did you experience lack? Do you know what it's like to have scarcity? Right? And so when we address that fear, we can figure out, okay, so we're living in reality. We know what you're scared of. So let's build around that. And the last thing that I tell people is this question on familiarity, right? And it's this idea that, am I open to change? Right? So this 3-step process of, I'm living in reality, what am I afraid of, and am I open to change? Because if I live in reality, we can make a plan and we can move forward. If I identify my fear and what I'm scared of, then I can either push through it or we can create a framework around it. And on the last one, what I'm actually saying is, okay, I'm open to change. Then that means it doesn't really matter how it plays out. It may not be to my liking. It may not be something I'm comfortable with, right? But I'm going to be flexible that my why and why I'm doing this is more important than the what. And so oftentimes, as people navigate through those 3 things, by the end of it, and there's a lot of discomfort, trust me, I've been there.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, you sit there and you're like, okay, well, all of a sudden, it's not that the things that I was struggling with and my pain has gone away. It's actually that I'm living in a reality that says, you know what? I'm prepared to keep moving forward. It may be 1 step back, 2 steps forward. It might be 2 steps back, 2 steps forward. But I'm going to keep moving because this is where we're at. You can't grow and you can't, right? If I'm going to use that adage, I cannot multiply what I'm not managing and I can't manage what I'm not measuring. And for a lot of people, they have no idea what the measurement of their life is. They have no idea what success looks like. They have no idea where they currently sit. So let's get that dose of reality because it's going to allow us to move from that baseline.
Yeah, and that's gotta be a hard thing. And open to change is a huge one too. There's so many out there that just really resist change. They like things the way they are. But the thing is, if what the way things were aren't getting you where they are, then you need to change. You need to make changes.
Totally.
So what advice would you give to individuals who are facing their own obstacles and setbacks in pursuing their goals?
Yeah, honestly, find your why. And if you're struggling to locate it, or if you feel like it's still surface level, get help, right? Whether that's a coach, whether that's a counselor, whether that's a friend who's significantly smarter than you are, just find your why. Really, really do some soul searching, because I think when you find that, that's what's going to push you through. That's what's going to help you go through. I think so often, again, we're humans, so we want to avoid pain at all costs. But the reality is you're going to face pain. Change is the only constant. And I want to be prepared not to avoid those things, but to help them, to better handle them, to understand them and harness them for the future. And so I just encourage everybody, find your why, right? Whether that's, again, family, whether that's, stuff that comes from childhood, find your why. And I think that's just such an important first maneuver that oftentimes we skip because we're either passionate or we're excited. We throw ourselves into things, but yeah, go back and find your why.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the video from Simon Sinek about the why and finding your why?
Yeah. Love it.
It is a good thing to watch if people, I guess, need kind of inspiration, because if they're not even sure what to start, because it's amazing how many of us, we grow up and we go in these roles and we just keep doing what we think we're supposed to be doing, but you're not truly happy. And most of that, I think, comes down to the fact that it's not your why.
Yeah, it's 100%. And so that's why for me, I can look back now and I would have never made the connection, but it doesn't matter what I've done in my life, what the window dressing was. I now sit in a place where I feel really fulfilled because I recognize that my why has always been there. The skin's changed, but the why's been there, and that's actually what drives me.
Yeah, and that's an incredible way to look at it. And I know we've talked about some of these lessons, but looking back at your journey, what are you most proud of achieving, and what lessons have you learned along the way?
What am I most proud of achieving? Oof, that's a good question. Again, I feel like I'm cheating on this one a little bit, but I would say if I'm proud of something, it's that I made really smart choices to surround myself with great people throughout this journey. That I could I could go on for hours. We don't have hours, but when I was stuck in, sometimes I'd lock myself in my house for 3 weeks at a time because I had, no desire to see people and things were rough. I had friends knock on my door, leave food at the door. I had a friend literally break through the screen on the window. That's a true story. Because people cared. People loved me. And but objectively, I don't think there's anything crazy unique about me or my story. I just think that I was fortunate enough to make decisions around building a community and being a part of groups of people that were good people. And so, yeah, I think that's a really important part. No matter, again, whether you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, whether you're working a 9 to 5, maybe you've been through an accident before. The community is so helpful because it ensures that you're not going through the journey alone. And I just don't think that we were ever built to live life alone.
No, I know the whole COVID thing made Zoom, Zoom and all these other platforms, most popular, which is great. It was still a way to connect, but a lot of us kind of missed that face-to-face,
Totally.
connection through that time.
I
Yeah.
do. I'm an extreme extrovert, so I definitely missed it.
I'm an ambivert. I'm in the middle. So I can go either way. It just depends. I was like, then that is a real thing.
Just ride in the middle, Laura. Ride in the middle.
I'm right in the middle. Yep. I was like, there's some part introvert, extrovert. A lot of people think I'm an extrovert. I said, no, I'm an ambivert. I'm like straight smack in the middle.
That's awesome.
So what is your favorite type of client? What's your favorite type of person to work with? Do you work with solopreneurs, big businesses, a variety?
Honestly, I've got a variety. Business owners, like I said, it's business owners, entrepreneurs, high level leaders. I think if there's one trait that I love working with people, it's people who are coachable. Um, we're all a little resistant to change. I think we're all also, even if you're personal growth minded, we're all a little resistant to being confronted. But it's this idea I find in a lot of my clients that I love, that people that are coachable that say, I've been in this industry for 15 years, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to change, even if it hurts me, even if it's hard. Because I think when you're coachable, man, anything is possible, right? That this idea that everything can be a conversation. And it goes back to, for me, I don't think of myself as an expert. I'm here to be a coach, and I'm here to help coach people and coach the best out of them. And so my favorite clients and the people that I love working with are anybody who says, you know what, wound me a little bit. It's going to be hard. I understand that, we might not get to where I want to be tomorrow, but wound me a little bit. So coachability is just such a beautiful quality, and it's something that I love looking for in clients, and in people I want to work with.
Yeah, I've worked with a number of coaches, and that's kind of always a thing, because really it's kind of wasting, your time, their money, if you're not coachable, because it's just kind of throwing money at something if you don't ever plan to implement anything. And there's a difference between implementing it and learning how to use it, but make it yours, not just following someone's footsteps, which I think a lot of people struggle with as well.
Totally. And full disclosure, I have turned down clients or working with people just because I was like, man, this is not, again, so much of my job is relational. So much of my business is relational that I also, outside of the money, outside of, the goals, I get such a joy when I see people go on this journey and start to become the best versions of themselves or unlock things that they hadn't seen before. So I want to feel that. And if you're resistant to change, extremely resistant, that's just an uphill battle that I'm not ready to fight.
Yeah. And it's incredible to have people like that have that kind of more, morals and stuff, because some people are just kind of more all about the money, but you were truly about helping people get there. And so do you have discovery calls with people, or how do you start that?
Yeah. So whenever someone goes to my website, they can book a free 15-minute discovery call with me. And it's just a real feeling out. And honestly, within 15 minutes, usually both parties know if it's going to be a fit or not. because again, it's just so relational for me that, there are things, because it's business, that we quantify and that, we can write it down and say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. But from my end, that discovery call is really great because I can understand a little bit about their story. I want them to hear a little bit about me and where I come from. And that mutual understanding is just so key to figure out, is this going to work? Is this a good way forward? So yeah, discovery calls are great. I do them all the time, and people can book them through my website.
Yeah. And to me, relationships are everything in that whole relational, deal, because I don't think people normally put enough emphasis on the relationship part, but there really has to be kind of that, what do you want to call it? The energy between the two of you, that says, hey, this is a good fit, which is why I like doing these interviews and stuff, so people can get to know more about people and not just see a face or an ad and just like not even know where to go.
No, I love it.
Yeah. So what is some of the advice then, or what would you like our audience to know the most about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in working with me, Laura, you've put the links up on the screen. You can look me up. I love to connect with people. But at the end of the day, I love working with people and seeing them reach their potential in business, in their organizations, in life. And so to me, really, it comes out of this place where I've been through quite a bit. And, I was just talking to someone the other day. I don't think that anybody, sorry to burst anyone's bubbles, but I don't think anyone here is self-made. I think we're all the products of, environments, families, and so I have this desire to help people reach their potential because that's what other people have done for me. And so, yeah, I just want to leave everybody with that.
So you help them put the systems and processes in place, or you just kind of helping them?
Everything from the business coach side of me helps you zoom out. We focus on strategy. That's where it's going to be a lot of the ideation and addressing mindsets. And then I'm a bit unique and a bit of a hybrid in that's what the coaching side does. The consulting side helps with the implementation. That's systems, structures, and processes. So strategy and vision on one side and mindsets, structures, systems, and processes on the other. So our agency caters to both sides. And that's something that I'm finding from talking to a lot of clients. Oftentimes when they engage with coaches or consultants, they feel like it's a missing piece, right? Where they're like, man, we have tons of strategy, but we actually suck at accountability. And so, or, hey, we've got so many people to outwork stuff, but we need someone to come in and really, just question our existing systems and question why we do things the way we do. So.
Or you may have people that have like a vision, but they have no strategy of how to get there.
Totally. Every ambitious entrepreneur ever.
Yeah, pretty much. Because I think we call it chasing the shiny objects. If something looks good and people but then, and you get going, you get all excited. But if you don't have those processes and stuff in place, or you don't have things balanced out, then you can, be like that little hamster in a wheel, even though you're not working for someone, you can do it for yourself too.
Totally. Just squirrel.
Yeah, squirrel. My friend is elder. Squirrel. I was like, what topic are we on? I was like, squirrel. Yeah. So you're on Instagram, right? They can follow you on Instagram. So Instagram
and LinkedIn. We've got the links there, but Matthew Sanjari, I'd love to connect with people. So.
Do you ever do little shorts or workshops, or do you ever do that kind of thing, or do you mostly do one-on-one?
Yeah. So right now I'm just primarily doing my coaching offerings. I'm hoping to get into some public speaking in a little bit. Shorts and things like that. We're going to hopefully build that in the next little bit, but there's just been such an opportunity with our bi-weekly, weekly, and twice a week coaching, the different options. So I've really invested a lot of my time into that.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. So you mentioned speaking though. So what are you thinking as far as speaking? TEDx stages, conferences? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I'd love to veer off into that. Hopefully, starting by the end of the year. I was a pastor on and off for 14 years, so I loved being able to inspire people and serve people in that way. And so, now coming kind of full circle with my story and some of the things we're seeing in business, I would love to test the waters a little bit and see if I can't help people just from a different platform. So hopefully going to get into that by the end of the year.
Awesome. And Prime Consulting is all your business, correct? That's all your.
Yeah. It's fine. We've got a team, but I'm the lead.
It's good to have a team. It takes off that extra stress.
Totally. And listen, like I started as a solopreneur, and I just I love doing things with people. So I love building things with people. And so it's just way more fun and way more fulfilling to do it as a team.
That is awesome. So we still have a few minutes. So what else would you like to share with the audience that you think is important for them to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, we've covered so much already, but I think for me, one of the biggest lessons that I'm actually writing a bit of a talk on it right now is this idea that, failure, because for me, I felt, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this at some point because we've all felt it. But for me, failure, that accident, that wasn't so much a failure as much as the failure came after, right? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do for work? Oh my gosh, my life is going to change. I feel powerless. I feel helpless. And I think that I've gone on this journey, and it's been this realization that failure is not, doesn't have to be finite or fatal. Doesn't have to be either of those. So it doesn't have to be an endpoint, right? Your failure doesn't have to be where things end, and failure also doesn't have to be the thing that takes you out, right? Obviously, there's so many good podcasts and so much great motivational material out there, but this idea that failure can actually just be a lesson that can be leveraged for the future is something that in the moment, man, I wish I'd been able, in hindsight, looking back, to be able to tell myself 10, 12 years ago. But looking back now and having that and being able to teach clients that and being able to build on that, I just think is so key, right? We all go, and it feels recurring, feels a little repetitive throughout the interview, but the truth is, there's these consistents. Change is consistent, pain is consistent. Failure, we will fail. You will fail. Sorry to burst everybody's bubble with podcast. I know. I came on here super inspirational. Failure is a constant. And so, but it doesn't have to be the way that I think a lot of society, we have it in our heads. It doesn't have to be finite. So it doesn't have to be the last thing or the final thing. And it doesn't have to be fatal. It doesn't have to be that death blow to that dream, that business, that relationship. And so for me, building off of that, I think has really helped me. I don't know that it's made encountering failure any easier, but in the aftermath, it's always given me something now where when I go through a failure, it's like, okay, what can I take from this? Right? It's like when a car goes to the scrapyard, you're like, this car isn't drivable, but somebody looks at that and says, man, this car's super useful. Right? There's things that I can take out of this. I can make this better with this. That steering wheel is in perfect condition. It would be better than my steering wheel. Yep. Which in my car is functional, right? And so again, I think that I look at failure like that, as that car in the junkyard, where I'm like, so quick, we're so quick sometimes to just walk away or run away from that. But if we actually treat it like that car in the junkyard, there are so many bits and pieces that we can salvage and that are going to be useful for our journey. And more than that, the people around us as well.
Yeah. And a lot of times they say that people are, afraid of failing. And so they never get started because they've got that fear of failure. And I don't remember who it was. I know I've read books on other people, but I always liked how because we beat ourselves up enough. So I always liked the perception or the perspective that I didn't fail. I learned a lesson. I'm like, it's not a failure. It's a lesson learned, and you move on. Now, I think it's failing if you keep doing the same thing and you don't learn anything from it. But
totally right. And it's funny because in that conversation with people, I know people sometimes can be so quick to like, oh yeah, but I'm in the moment. It sucks right now. I'm like, that's why I encourage people. I'm like, find something useful in it, right? So in that analogy, right, you can look at the car and say, well, this car sucks, and walk away from it. But there's one thing, at least one thing you can look and say, well, the steering wheel looks great, or this window looks great, or this door handle looks great. Take something from your failure and bring it with you, because it's going to be useful instead of just writing off the entire experience.
Yeah. And then looking at it that, oh my God, I just wasted how much time of my life or whatever. Because then people just kind of go in that downward spiral.
Totally. Can relate.
But like you said, it's perception, it's perspective. We all have different ones. And I think if nothing else, you can help people maybe see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So when you do your talks, your speaking, is it on coaching? Is it mindfulness? You said you do pastoring. What kind of
So in the
topics?
In the past, I've been a pastor, and so that's been a combination of a lot of Christian topics, also a bit of leadership development.
Uh-huh.
I think in this iteration, it's very much going to be, again, that hybrid of coaching consulting. The coaching talks are very much, again, around mindset and around vision and helping people zoom out to actually see the things that matter. But when we talk about consulting, it's really going to be a lot of implementation, operations. So that's when, we'd come in, and I would talk about frameworks, this idea of like, okay, so, the one that I gave to you earlier, what's the 3-step process every time we feel like we get stuck? Why are we stuck? Right? We could sit here and throw things at a whiteboard for hours on end, or we can ask ourselves these questions, right? We can ask ourselves A, B, and C. Why am I stuck? What am I afraid of? What's holding us back? And so equipping people with those tools in talks like that, again, it's not just so much to tickle people's ears and that they feel like, oh, this was amazing. It's so that they can walk away and say, I place myself in this problem, right? I've been there, or I've been in an iteration of there. I'm going to try and apply these tools and see if they help my life or help my situation or my business. So the talks are geared, again, a little bit different. On the coaching side, it is more inspirational and more motivational. But
Sure.
on the consulting side, the talks tend to be more functional, more practical, and more along the implementation side.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it all kind of intertwines, a little bit. But yeah.
Totally. So much crossover, and I'm loving it. So I'm really excited to kind of go down that road a little bit.
So before we're done, you mentioned fiance. So are you getting married soon?
I am. We have not set a date yet, but we got engaged in January, and yeah, she's the best. She's the absolute best, and so we haven't picked a date or a time yet, which is much to the chagrin of everyone in our lives who just wants to get this on the road. But we're working on a few things in the works. So.
Well, that is awesome. And it's great when you have that kind of connection and support, because I think you mentioned that before too, going through things, having the right support and stuff around you is important too.
Totally, 100%. And so, the fact that we can kind of just walk through life as a team, and she's actually a business owner as well, does emotional health coaching. And so, yeah, just the shared perspective and the support is just incredible.
Yeah, I can even see the kind of collaborating between the two of you guys since the business, because you'll have people that need that part to get their business on track, and it all works.
Totally. Yeah. And we'll cross that bridge of cross-pollination in a bit, I'm sure.
Well, Matthew, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and sharing that with everybody. And definitely, if anyone that's starting the business wants this, needs the strategies, the vision, definitely reach out to Matthew. I'm sure, as you can see, he's very personable, easy to connect to, and has been through a lot. So, oops. I have a puppy loose in the back. Sorry about that. He was out there. He just came in and about knocked things over. Apologize. Anyway, thank you for sharing all that with us. Any last words before we go?
No, honestly, just thanks for having me. It's been such an easy, great conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And to everyone else, definitely connect with Matthew, and we will see you next week on Mindful Mondays.